A very warm welcome to everybody joining. I'm Jackie Wilson-Smith, and this is Food and Fibre Plus, the kickoff workshop. And this is hosted by Matt McIntyre, and is going to be the project lead who will be doing the introductions. So over to you, Matt. Just checking, Matt, that you can hear me.
So first hiccup, I was on mute. Welcome to everybody. My name's Matt. I'm the project manager for the Food and Fibre Plus project here at CHDC. Welcome to our first kickoff event. There's many participants, many are still clicking in. It's a good representation. We're up near 70 participants today from the central Queensland, the broader central Queensland regions, and throughout Queensland. I'd like to first welcome you to country by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we will work today for the next hour and a half or two, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people participating in this virtual workshop. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal people and their ongoing cultures to the land, sea and waters of Queensland. So thank you. Before I talk further, we know with whatever form of IT we use for virtual, there will be problems. We know there's some weather down the coast, so we may have dropouts. So I assure everyone that this will be recorded and we can follow up those where there's dropouts or technical problems with recordings. Another IT in this quick hour, we will be using the chat function a lot for people to offer questions or comments. Just bear with us. We won't be able to answer all those questions and comments directly, but they will be followed up. So just keep that in mind when you're asking questions, or they will be useful and will be followed up with you individually if we can't answer them through the forum. So welcome to the guests. As I said, there's participants from right throughout the central Queensland, especially a lot of the small and medium enterprises and businesses, which are the eventual beneficiaries for our work over the next 5 to 6 months and beyond. You know, we've got landowners, tourism operators, we've got industry and retailers and others in government, local government and state government. I want to make mention of our regional partners to this project, the Mackay-Isaac Whitsunday region, managed through GW3, the Central West Queensland participants and partners, with the focus being Rapid, Fitzroy with CHDC, and many other growing collaborators throughout Central Queensland. We are particularly thankful for the 15 or so recognised champions across the regions who have been involved in interviews and inputs to the project through our consultant Jackie Wilson-Smith. I'd also want to have recognised the partner to this with CHDC, Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, and particularly the project management team, the industry development officers from DAF throughout the 3 regions, and starting with Lou Markey and Christy Clark at Rockhampton. We have Rob Nissen and Helen Newell from the Mackay area, Hayley Ems from Banana area. We have Jason Huggins and Kimberly Percival from DAF, Southeast Queensland, and the link there with Advanced Queensland, and also David Phelps from out Longreach. So the project management team has been built to be an active project management team to work with Jackie and myself. It has been operating since about May this year. Also, I'd like to recognise the Regional Central Queensland Innovation Network, whose members include a number of councils, the LBF, and we're inviting Rapid and GW3 to be part of that network, which will cover the whole of the Central Queensland region, for this project over the next 6 months. I just need to give a brief overview. I'm not going to be too long. Essentially, we're in phase 1 of the project proposal, which was made available through the Regional Network Fund managed by Advanced Queensland. Our submission was to, in this first year through to early next year, was to evaluate the options for a prospect cluster network platform, to enhance our resilience and build sustainable business through the innovation window, but particularly focusing on food and fibre and the associated cross-sector industries. The RNF has as a purpose to increase collaboration, increase leverage, increase sustainability, and come up with impactful actions. The team that we put together late last year to design this project and what's come to fruition with the 4 focused themes so far is to add to that in terms of ensuring consistency in where we go forward with actions, increasing our ability to be great advocates for our region, to ensure there's continuity and focus and effort from everything from systems directions to capacity building and on the human resource side, and possibly not trying to be too negative, but ensure that the program is not SEQ centric for this project. What we're hoping today to do is to share with the stakeholders what's happening so far, what has happened, where we're going to, and explain the process a bit more, and give you a chance to be involved as stakeholders, and some of you to join as collaborators as we go forth in the next 4 to 5 months. We want it to be interactive, this forum and subsequent forums, and we will be following up with further interviews, discussions, visits, and helping design their subsequent forums. In terms of the co-design process, this is the kickoff. It is the first of our virtual forums. It's the bridging forum to show what we're about, what's been done, the key messages gained so far, and introduce you to the co-design process, which will involve at least another 4 to 5 smaller and then larger design forums towards the end of the year. It is co-design. It is meant right through. It's from sorting out what are the key problems, what are the consistent problems, through to helping us to do the more in-depth analysis and next phases and coming up with design. And we welcome participants that maintain their contact with us and the team, and those that may want to join as collaborators towards the end. Now, I'd like now to introduce the CEO for Central Highlands Development Corporation, who are the administrative managers for this project. And I welcome Arj Gluma as our CEO of CHDC.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And look, I joined CHDC about 2.5 months ago, so I'm pretty new to the organisation, but I've been working for a long time in regional central Queensland. And this initiative is really of high importance to regional central Queensland, and it shows that great things are happening here. And it's wonderful to see so many people joining us today, particularly because it's across organizations, across regions, across industries, and across roles. And I think we will work hard to even grow that number of participants during this project, because the more participants and the more diverse, the greater the outcome is for regional central Queensland. And CHDC and myself are really proud to be part of this initiative, and I believe that the collaboration so far and looking forward with all you on board is one of the key success factors going forward. And I think together we can, like I said before, we can drive great outcomes for regional central Queensland. And we have an amazing team, including Jacqueline, who was the consultant helping us out on this project. So I would like to introduce you to Jacqueline.
Thank you so much, Arjen. It's wonderful to be here and to see so many warm faces looking back at me. I'm currently zooming in from a paddock in my shed. It's a nice shed, it's an art shed, in regional Queensland on the Sunshine Coast, and I'm really looking forward to working with you all. So how we are going to run this session today, I'm just going to share the screen again, is that this is going to be very much a workshop. So I will be sharing some information and what I've discovered so far, but there will be lots of points along the way where I'd love you guys to be interacting and being part of this co-design process. So to get us warmed up with that, I'd love everyone to use the chat function, which if you are not familiar with, across the bar, you should have a little black bar and there should be a little point down there that says chat. So as we have questions along the way, or comments or thoughts or anything, it would be great for you to keep the conversation going by using the chat function. So right now, if everyone could just use the function, type in your name and where you are right now, that will just help us to get going and get an understanding where everybody is today. That would be brilliant. So other things we will be using, there will be some polls and they'll be fairly straightforward as to how that works. We also will be doing a breakout session towards the end where you'll have a chance to meet some of your fellow collaborators who are on this call today. And at the very end, we are going to stay back. So the workshop itself will go for just 1 hour. So we will finish at 12. But we will be remaining on the call for anyone who'd like to stay back and have a talk. So, and I will facilitate that. We'll use the raise hand function to be able to do that. But leading up to that, it will be use the chat and the polls. And from if I can ask everybody just to keep themselves muted, but their video on would be fantastic. Okay, so what is Food and Fibre Plus? So just to build upon what Matt had already said, is that this is an initiative to bring together regional central Queensland. And this is bringing together all different types of people from industry, from government, from the agencies, from across the non-for-profit sector, so across our communities, and to bring these people together so that we can investigate the use of a clustered networking system so that in context and relation to food and fibre, we can enhance our business sustainability and build our resilience across central Queensland. So in terms of the regions that are involved, it's focusing in on this central belt. So here, I just mentioned I was on the Sunshine Coast, so I'm down here. And the Sunshine Coast is one of the partnering collaborators as a region to help with sort of benchmarking. But this primarily is an invitation across the whole of this central belt here as the starting point. So why? Why are we doing this? Well, it's an investigation at this point, but the thought behind it is that our regional boundaries cross over. And in particular, since we've had the impacts of COVID-19 and we always are having climate shocks, that this is really elevating and bringing to the forefront the need for more grassroots action and more collective action, because the problems and the challenges that lie ahead, I believe, and this is going to be for all of us to co-design, we believe that there are many that are far too big to solve alone. So by working together, we can achieve so much more. It's also an opportunity to build capacity across the regions, reduce duplications, and to also create central Queensland-owned solutions and find pathways for emerging industries such as byproduct reuse, part of the circular economy, agri-tourism, looking at how we can dial that up, and also things such as carbon farming. So these are just some of the many, many, many examples. And what the Food and Fibre Plus vision is to deliver is systemic changes. So towards these 4 themes, which will come throughout the workshop today. So as a little bit of background, we're looking at themes such as the cooperative agritourism, circular economy, reducing the length of our supply chains, and with that in part shifting to value chains, and sustainable food and land management systems with improved emphasis on water security. And all of this is sort of wrapped up whilst celebrating each of the region's uniqueness within that sort of larger band that goes across central Queensland. So where are we at today? We are at the early co-design stage, as Matt has alluded, right at the very beginning. So you're all invited to be a part of this and helping to shape a more modern way of working together. And I can see we're already getting some comments through on the chat and some questions. So keep those going and we'll be able to address those towards the end. So to get us warmed up as well, we've got a quick poll. So if you're at a computer, this may be a little bit more limited if you're looking at this through a phone, but I'm going to launch a quick poll, and basically how it works is that I'm asking from what you've heard so far, from what Matt has explained, what Jen has explained, and just the brief overview for myself, from what you've heard so far about the Food and Fibre Plus initiative. Is this one extremely unimportant, you may as well, not interested, or is this extremely important at a 10, or is it somewhere in between? So if everybody can just quickly have a vote, and I'll be able to publish these results in a moment. And there's going to be lots of polls like this. I'm going to close it in 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, ending the polling. And I'll share the results so that we get a feel for it. So, right. So we've had, most people are either 6 or above. Sounds like we're all going to hang in for the rest of this talk as we hear more. And this is just the start. So thanks for that, everyone. There'll be more polls like this along the way. So what's the methodology? We're using a number of methods, but most importantly, we're using design thinking in a co-designing phase. And so by that, we're doing things such as looking at observations, looking at what literature has already been done before, what works, so we're not duplicating efforts, but we're also spending a lot of time speaking to stakeholders. And I know that many of you are in our virtual room today, so I want to thank those 15 stakeholders who I have interviewed over the past month or so. We'll be defining the problems through the industry stakeholders' points of view. And then when we look at, well, how can we find solutions, we're able to be really pointed with those solutions because we know that they're actually addressing real problems. So the methodology is something called empathy mapping. So when I've been having these chats, I've been asking people about what are they seeing, what are they hearing, what do they think, and really importantly, what do they feel, so that we can get a good gauge of what the appetite for change is. And so far, out of the 15 people I've spoken to, I would be, I think what we've just seen in the poll is really reflective of the appetite for change. It's actually really high at the moment across this whole central region for making systemic changes, addressing some of the core issues that are around. And also there's some hope that we can be creating some shared value, becoming more resilient, and there's a lot of hope around having a more coordinated focus so that we have less wastage of time and money and resources. So what are we discovering? So as I mentioned earlier, we've got 4 key themes have been emerging really strongly. That's agri-tourism, circular economy, and I'll go into that one in a bit more detail because there certainly is some haziness around exactly what does that mean. Sustainable land management systems and water security, improving our supply chains, and with that shifting to value chains. And then there's an overarching critical observation that I've made from the great conversations with the 15 stakeholders, is that there seems to be a real appetite for thinking about our mindset, and that now potentially could be a great time for addressing that and thinking about how we approach problems. So as I'm going to share with you the highlights from each of these, and just so that you know what to expect, I'll do each of the 4 and I'll share just what I've heard from the stakeholders. So this isn't my view, this is I'm sharing with you what I have heard from the stakeholders. And it's just the start. So bear in mind the size is there's 15 people that I've spoken to, and that's only just skimming the top. So I'm sure that there's many more people in our virtual room today. So I'd like you all to start thinking about what's missing, or what would you like to build upon, because after I've gone through these 4 sessions, we're going to have a breakout group, which means I'm going to put you into small groups and you'll be able to have a chat. So as I go through each one, if you've got a pen and paper, I encourage you to grab it and sort of jot down where you think, oh, you know, I agree with that, or this is missing, or whatever from there. So starting with agri-tourism, these are some of the sound bites that I heard. So there's a bit of fear. There's fear that, you know, focusing, if you're a producer, focusing on agri-tourism could be a diversion from core. There is a fear that there's too much red tape involved. It'd be too hard to get into this. And there's also a fear of litigation. You know, if I was to quote, you know, they were scared that, you know, what happens if a grey nomad falls over in the creek? You know, I might get sued. There's definitely some fear. Concerns around personality. Have I got the right personality to do this? You know, I'm not really a people person. You know, that kind of concerns were being heard. There was concern about agri-tourism is potentially risky in this part of Australia, this part of Queensland, because of where we're positioned. You know, whether it was, I heard things such as there's too many flies, there's heat, we've got cyclones, floods, sharks, you know, on the coastal part. So is this too big of a risk? I heard that some people felt that communities are just not working together as well as they could be, not being backed, and that potentially is some closed thinking. You know, we don't need to fall back on tourism. And due to COVID, there's some uncertainty. You know, what are the borders doing? Are they open? Are they shut? And what's the future here? So on the shiny side, on the sunny side, the flip side, I also heard a lot of optimism about where we could be focused to create value and shared value by working together better. So I had some great ideas, and you'll see, just as a bit of a pattern so everyone knows where I'm going here, I'll always start with the pain points, and we do that on purpose because it helps ground us as to, you know, where is the energy and where are the problems that we need to be solving and building from. But on the sunny side, so over here, we're seeing some real positivity around mentoring, that those who are having success, there's a real openness to, yeah, I could help others. I could help them cut through that red tape. I could help them show them the way and help them make that change. There are great ideas around digitized platform systems so that we can be, as an example, tracking our tourists, informing our tourists through digital systems so that we can improve our efficiencies. There are lots of opportunities about cross-promoting from region to region. So as the tourists sort of shift through, we can build up this agri-food education story as well, and really bringing in the people to bring to life the wonderful food and fibre that we are producing in our whole sort of region. And it's much more than just the product, it's the people as well. And there were some great ideas around gap year agri-tourism programs. And this is a little bit of a COVID response, because we've got all these school leavers who used to take gap years overseas, and could we be tapping into that and using that as a way to get more younger people into our regional areas. And the ideas there were really vast, everything from Indigenous cultural experiences to farm skills. So again, this was just a snapshot. We've heard a lot more, but I just wanted to give you some of the highlights of what the stakeholders have shared so far. And so at this point, I'm going to run another quick poll. So from what you've heard so far about the agri-tourism theme, I would like to know, and I'll just bring it up, from the agri-tourism theme, if 1 is extremely unimportant and 10 is extremely important, or are you somewhere in between? Where do you sort of think the agri-tourism theme sort of sits for you. And this is just an individual pulse check, so just to give us a feel. So I'm going to end the poll in 3 seconds. So get your votes in quick. 1, 2, 3. And the poll is ending. And let's share those results. So here we go. Again, we're getting a 7 is the highest, and we've got some right up at 8, 9, and 10, and a few at 4, 5, and 6. So let's just keep that in mind as we go through the next theme. And also, don't forget to use the chat. If you've got some questions or queries, use the chat, because the team at the project management team will be able to address those, not in this workshop, but we'll be able to go back and address those later. So great. So on to the next of the 4 themes is circular economies. Now, before I start, I want to share one of the observations that I had is there is definitely an opportunity for a greater understanding of exactly what circular economies is. What does that mean? So in terms of the most simple definition I could find, just to help bring everyone up to the same understanding here, it's how business, and it could be how a community, anyone finds, uses and disposes of resources. So that is looking at, let's home in on what some of the pain points are. So in terms of the mindset, as I just mentioned, there's a bit of that lack of understanding beyond waste recycling. From an infrastructure point of view, there's the opportunities to improve our resource recovering capabilities. In terms of organic matter, I did hear some frustrations being shared that there's still far too much is going into landfills still. So I know I'm sort of getting quite granular here, but I wanted to just give people a feel for the flavour of the conversations. There is a lack of tracking of our resources. So if we want to get good at managing our resources, we need to be able to know where the resources are, and countries that are really good at this have got awesome tracking. And circular economies and these new sort of business models actually require complex collaboration. And that in itself is really hard. And also, who leads it? Because you often have multiple parties that need to be involved in changing the models so that we can be better at keeping our resources in reuse. So on the sunny side, as always, so looking at both angles here, lots of opportunities started to emerge. So things such as asset sharing. So that could be, as an example, just one, sharing processing machinery and changing the ownership models that can go by that. So instead of, owning an asset, it might be sort of renting the use of an asset for a period of time. And these sorts of models are actually really progressive in Holland and in parts of Europe. So in terms of collective ownership, that's where that idea can come down, and that can be supported with digital platforms. Looking at some more renewable energy sources, and whether that's bio-based, and through that too would be looking at fibre byproduct innovation. So an example here was the barley straw for algae control. And just a greater investment into sort of biotech, bio-based tech industry development was another area. And an example of that was a seaweed, particularly obviously on the coastal side. Embracing the Internet of Things so that we can start responding to being able to track our resources. And then finally, just improving our circular infrastructure in general, and be that sort of physical, digital, new business models, and also just the mindsets of the sort of social implications that come from that too. So just like before, we're now going to do a quick poll on circular economies, and what that means is we are going to use exactly the same methodology. So I'd like you to put from what you've heard about the circular economy theme, is this 1, extremely unimportant? Or is this 10, extremely important? Or is it somewhere in between? So if you can quickly put your vote in, and I'm going to stop the poll in 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'll share the results here so we can see. So we've got the highest score there is a 9, but I'd say just at a glance, and this is why it's really interesting for all of us to see this, at a glance we can see that there's more of a spread there as well. So we had some more people going, nah, you know, but there's definitely some people up this end too. So great to be able to get that really quick pulse from all of us. So thank you everybody for sharing that. Okay, so we're tracking along well. So the next theme is the sustainable land management and water security inputs from here. So there was a lot more, as you can see, there's lots of comments here because there was a lot of talk about this one. So I'm just going to share again some of the pain points that I heard, and some of them are quite granular and some of them are big in general, but I heard a lot about weeds. People hate this weed, particularly the prickly acacia. And because it's not just the environmental impact, it's also the economic impact that this is having on our production capabilities. And yeah, so we could do a whole session on this one. Macropods, you know, I was interested to hear that, you know, some people were saying that, you know, if you're managing your land well, the perverse thing is then the roos are actually attracted to the well-managed lands. There was some frustration that there's little incentive to invest in our natural capital. So natural capital being our soils and our water and the quality of our land, all our things that are natural. And it feels that, you know, there were short-term risks if we're going to be managing this, and you know, so how do we help overcome those short-term risks? So there were definitely some frustrations there, and coupled with that is the fear to make a regenerative change when we don't have the knowledge. Some people don't have the knowledge. It feels risky. The outcomes are unknown. And there's sort of well, it can't happen this year because it would be too risky and it's just too hard. So it's sort of pushed off, or just uncertainty that sort of couples with that sort of fear of making a change. A lot of talk about water, and I've got here water runs off everywhere, you know, so had the analogy that, you know, once the ground is so dry and the groundwater is so low, when it rains it's just like a tin roof, was the analogy that was shared with me, and that there's little incentive to actually take responsibility as individuals and producers to capture the water responsibly. So I just thought that was an interesting perspective that I've captured, and it was sort of like the shift of you know, how can we actually get everyone to care and to do what they can, you know, collaboratively and collectively. And the example here that was talked about by one of the stakeholders was the concept of investigating for the leaky dams and having lots of people doing that. And just in general, do we need a better landscape to understand our unique water system in these ancient soils that's potentially different from anywhere else in the world? So on the sunny side, lots of collaborative opportunities have come out of these pain points too. So, and many of them are responsive. So collaborative weed management programs where you could have tech tracking solutions, greater governance. You know, perhaps this is more of a stick if we aren't managing our weeds, or is there incentives for that, and containment. So I know a lot of these are already happening, but how the discussions which I'm sharing with you is how to dial that up. More strategic cluster fencing programs, which might help with the macropods as well as the feral animals. Natural capital enhancements, so things as an example, carbon farming on dryland areas. Support with regenerative farming, so more science-based transition support for those landholders, particularly who are fearful that, oh, I'm just not sure if it's going to make a difference, and having role models to really and show case studies where erosion and sediment control has made a difference, and business cases to support that as well as the environmental impacts. So really looking at the economic sustainability as well as the environmental sustainability. And looking at IP for our Indigenous native bush foods, medicines and seeds. So putting protocols in place so that these can be commercialised, but in a way that the beneficiaries are kept within, it's kept within Queensland as the people who benefit. And a pilot with landowners for this integrated water management system. So this is sort of the response to how can we adapt perhaps regenerative principles such as leaky dams, and doing that with a number of landowners working together. So again, capture your thoughts for our breakout room, and I'm about to do a quick poll on, from what you've heard about sustainable land management. I would like to hear from you all. Just bringing that up. I would love to hear from you all. Sorry, I'm just getting the right one up for us. Right, here we go. I'm going to bring up the right poll for ourselves. So sustainable land management and water security, launch polling. So let us know. So you've got the chance to vote here. Is this a 10, 8, 9, 1, 2, somewhere in between? So I'm going to count to 3 before I stop, end this poll and share the results. So 1, 2, 3. End the poll and share the results. Well, I think this one's, there's a lot of energy for this. So thanks everyone. There's a couple of people who not so sure, but it's pretty loud and clear that there certainly is a tremendous amount of energy for this one. So isn't it great that we can just get this quick pulse using these virtual tools, which is one of the reasons why we're doing this way. So thank you everyone for that. Okay, so we're on to our last theme, which is improving supply chains and shifting to value chains. So some of the pain points that we heard is that, it still is a very centralized system. I know it's not entirely, but there was a lot of conversation about everything still funneling to Brisbane, and it means that, as that happens, the value ends up going down into that region. There's concern about the IFAM subsidy running out, particularly for fresh freight. And so this is, a COVID response, and I could talk about this for a long time. And but there was definitely that was brought up. There's a lack of transparency, so poor tracking in general, and we have a lot of inefficiencies, and we're not using the technologies as well as we potentially could be using them. Value adding is occurring in the cities. It's not occurring out of the regions across this sort of central Queensland area. So it's not as though it's not at all, but there's opportunities for more. And this sort of led into, well, it was the infrastructure chicken and egg story, that we need critical mass to get the infrastructure, but then you need the infrastructure to get critical mass. So how can we, get around this? And just the planning red tape, as a quote, one of the stakeholders said, there's as many hoops to jump as if we were building an agri-food processing facility in the Queen Street Mall as what we, have to jump through in central Queensland. And so I'm sharing with you the pain points and that have been discovered so far. So on the flip side, the positive aspects is that there's a real appetite to build business cases for critical mass so that we can justify to get the infrastructure in, but that's going to need really strong collaborative effort. Concerns about, well, what's after the IFAM subsidies running out? Are we going to be having, passenger planes regularly flying in and out over the next year? And how are we going to be dealing with fresh rates? So is there an opportunity of how we can work together and plan around that in a more stronger way? Digitized tracking. How can we help the goods flow faster with greater visibility? So all about reducing inefficiencies, and this all links in really, really nicely with the, building that business case for critical mass. Shared projects. There were lots of examples, but one example here would be, forecasting, since we're talking about supply chains. And instead of each of our producers replicating the same process and everybody having the same challenges, can producers work in tandem here so that we can have some systems to really fast track the efficiency and accuracy of our forecasting? That's just one example of a shared project. Mentoring, there's a real generosity of spirit where people are saying things like, I'd be happy to help fast track another producer so that I don't have to go through all the heartache that I had to go through. And this example was red tape. And so I thought there's a wonderful generosity here, and how can that be dialed up? And to help the planners, so this was like town planners, understand the nuances for innovation in regional and rural areas, so that the approval processes are fit for purpose. So that's really in response to the, not having a cookie cutter approach. Not to say that we don't need approval processes, just having them fit for purpose. So as per usual, we're going to do our quick poll here to get a feel for this. So this is supply chains to value chains, and I'm just going to launch the poll. So exactly the same. So if you think this is really important, this would be a 10, or if you think this is not very important, this would be a 1, or somewhere in between. So I can see the numbers all coming through. I'm counting to 3 and I'm going to end that polling. So 1, 2, and 3. Share the results. So the highest score here was 7, but saying that, everybody was either a 6 or higher, and closely followed after the 7 was a 10. So looking at this, there's a really strong appetite for this area as well. So thanks guys for that. I'll stop sharing those results. And so that brings us to the final point before we go into our breakout session, and preparing you all for the breakout session to start thinking about what challenge you would like to share and talk about in your breakout session. So the final observation, and this is outside of the theme, but it came through from, I think all of the stakeholders, all 15 of them talked about this in some way or another, is about this sort of observation about our mindset, that there was a lot of, particularly people who had been working in different parts of the world, it was sort of like, well, us Aussies, we're such a, we're a great bunch. We can be very, competitive, and we can be very assertive, and we can be focused in on our own goals. And we've had to do this so often because it's, we're also out on our own, and everyone prides themselves on being independent, being able to solve problems by themselves, and they trust themselves, and they don't have to be reliant on others. If you start thinking about other countries and other cultures, they can be quite different from us. We're sort of like this tough bunch. But with that comes some negatives as well. So there's potentially a lack of sharing. And the default is that often you have a few really big winners, and we miss out on the opportunity of creating shared value. So on the flip side, and some great conversations with those stakeholders around this, is there an opportunity to shift our headspace, shift our minds, so that we don't lose our assertiveness, that we're still just as, determined, and we've got that grit, but we focus on our goals. So that takes time, because it means you've got to really understand what are everyone's goals. And it's about building systems where we trust each other, not to let each other down. And those systems are going to be dependent on transparency. So it's a shift from sort of secrecy to transparency within a safe network. And then there are network advantages, because you can help each other out. And then everyone wins in the network, and that we can create shared value, and whereby the sum of each is greater than by working together, it's greater than the sum of the many parts, I think is the saying. So a quick poll from what you've heard about collaborative mindset, this shift towards adopting a more assertive, but trying to look at everyone's goals versus our own goals. How important is this? So I'm going to start this poll. Is this extremely important at a 10, or is this not really that important? So let's see, I'm launching the poll. So I'm going to start counting down. 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, share the results. So here we go. So we've got some really high results around. It's either 8 and 10 got the two highest zones, and then after that we had 7 and 9. So I think in summary there is a appetite that we need to be thinking about our headspace here. Great. Well, that is now leading us into we are going to do a breakout session. So if you've never done this before, it's a bit of fun. We've got 10 minutes and it's the last part of our session. And I'm going to send all of you into a room and we will have, I'm going to create, just seeing how many people are on the call there. We're going to create about 10 different rooms. So in your room, you will be automatically assigned to a room, and there'll be about 3 to 4 people in your room. And when you go in, it's an opportunity to have a chat. And what I'd like you all to do is 1, introduce yourselves to each other, and then 2, from all the challenges we've heard, what do you feel that we should be working together on? It may be something that we haven't heard so far, but use the thoughts and the themes that we've spoken about so far. And when we come back, we're going to share that in the chat. So I'm about to open all rooms. I can see where you've all been slotted into, and have fun. And I'll see you in 10 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. So how was that? So you can use your reactions little button down below along your bar. So getting a few thumbs up. Did anyone hate it? Did anyone have a terrible time? You know, or did everyone have fun? Generally people quite like this experience. So what I'd love you all to do is need it longer. Everyone says that. I reckon I could just do workshops and I just go, hi, now I'm putting you into a breakout session, because everyone just loves a breakout session and there's never enough time. So I would love you all to do a task now and just reflect on it and use the chat function, because we're going to be looking at all your feedback. So go to the chat function and jot down in there, what challenge do you feel is really important that we should be collaborating and working upon, you know, more. And I want to hear from the heart, guys. Absolutely. Like, what is important that we should be, you know, we should be doing this. Oh, someone couldn't be heard. Okay. I'm sorry about that, guys. Tech issue. Okay. So in the chat, please talk, chat down, jot down what you think is a challenge that really we should be working together on. Something that's got a sense of urgency about it, that we could really make a difference.
Jacqueline, it's Christy. I'm really sorry, but I don't know why I can't use the chat. It's just...
just email me, Christy. Send me an email.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just, I think it's an IT issue with my computer. It's just doing 0000 in lines. I don't know how to get out of it. I've had it all morning, so it probably needs to...
Just send me an email. That's no problem at all.
Yeah, okay. It's not that, it's, yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, well, we're now going to go to the final sort of wrap up, and we've now completed the workshop. So closing remarks, I'm going to hand over to Matt, and we, you know, we're now on time, so Matt will close it, but we are going to hang out here for another half an hour or so for anybody who would like to continue having a chat. And for that, I will take the presentation part off, and we will just use the raise hand button. So if you want to stay for a talk, raise your hand, and we'll have a talk. Or if you don't want to speak, you can just put it all into the chat function as well. But we're going to hang around for another half an hour. So on that point, I'm going to stop sharing, hand over to Matt for the closing remarks, and let the conversations begin. Thank you, everyone. You've been lots of fun.
Okay.
Over to Matt.
Thanks very much, Jackie, and thanks for everyone who's dialed in today. I know quite a few that I talked to were going to register but knew they couldn't dial in, so we'll make sure they're enveloped into follow-ups as well. Sorry for those who've had a few technical issues. We've had some ourselves when we went through practice this morning. Look, I just want to re-emphasise that this is a co-design process. We've used at the start of people-orientated empathy mapping to look at the, you know, a bit of a litmus test of the interest of the corralled theme so far. We are developing a situation analysis, and the next phase will get into a bit more detailed problem analysis. So the broad nature of what we've presented today has been picked up by some, which is a healthy observation. Cluster networks have been around for a long time. More lately, it's getting into programming and governance and in industry. So I just want to sound out that in the near future, one of some of the latter workshops, we're going to be enveloping a capacity building focus for those presentations as well. Understanding networks, how we can use IT like today, etc., for this virtual sort of engagement and ongoing systems. There may be some of the participants don't, may not think that they might think there's a subset of agri-tourism, whatever that should be our focus. That's fine. Get that feedback to us. Others have made comment that it duplicates what's already happening. With that problem thinking from here forward, we do not want to be repeating and duplicating things already. And the beauty of a cluster network approach is that accepts the great work that's been going on, say, for Clean Growth Choices in Central Highlands and Barcode, and it doesn't try and capture that and take it over. It just brings that part of into part of that networking, getting the good learnings from those processes and sharing it a bit better amongst the regions. We're going to be focusing, I've already had some discussions with local government, and I'm just putting my urban and regional planning hat back on. We like having a go, and I've done it too, of planners and red tape, but we've got to realise too that there's capacity building, that we have discussions here with council about the nuances of law and policy and bringing in the flavour for remote and rural areas. And there's a lot of interest by planners and development managers in local governments to be involved as well. Mindset is important, as it's come out, and we really have an attitude of leaving no one behind with the project management team. As I've said earlier, it is an active project team. You'll get a lot of communications from the industry development officers of DAF, but also the likes of CHDC personnel in the economic development arena as well. So if there's better ways to do communication and better focus that you feel is needed, then just let us know. For those who've had tech problems or don't think their issues need better sounding out, just email myself. Alicia Dunbar, I've got to point out, is one of the project leads with myself. So if you just copy myself, Alicia Dunbar and Jackie, that'd be great. So thanks very much for your efforts today.
Okay, well,
I'll hand back to you, because anyone who wants to stay on, and we'll open the mics.
Yeah, great. And I'm actually going to stop recording at this point so that people feel they can say what they want. So I'm just pressing stop recording, and